If you like this video, please rate, comment, share and subscribe. If you dislike it, please tell me why so I can improve, and I'll see you now, actually, because sorry, I'll get into that. Whooping cough. Before I talk about whooping cough in more detail, I want to talk about how to treat it, and then I'll explain it, because that, first things first, let's talk about that. This here is tincture of cherry bark. Herbalists generally use herbs that are dissolved in a mixture of alcohol and water as a solvent and a preservative. So there it is, cherry bark. It's unusual because it's an anti-tussive, that is, it reduces the tendency to cough, and there's a reason why you need to do that in whooping cough and generally avoid it in most other coughs. It involves bark, and that being a tree, you should probably try to avoid doing that kind of thing. So I'll talk about the others, and I'm going to try and put photos in. The others, the kind of expectorants that you need are the ones that are relaxing, the stimulant expectorants such as garlic, thyme and so forth, whereas they are also antibacterial. In those cases, you want to avoid using them. If you stimulate whooping cough, it's already stimulated enough, and it will, you basically have to cough your lungs out and you get the usual problems. The ones that you need to use are mullein, which is Verbascum thapsus. That's the one with the very furry leaves, solons of yellow flowers. It's all over the place. It's a common weed in this country. Another one is licorice. Now with licorice you have to be careful for two reasons. One, it raises blood pressure, which can be a good thing, but you need to be careful with that. And two, it increases the amount of sodium in your body, so you have to be careful for that reason as well. Nevertheless, it's a soothing expectorant like mullein is. It will tend to soothe. Inula helenium or elecampane. That is also good for asthma, and it's a mucociliary escalator. That is, it will increase the rate at which the cilia, the hairs in your lungs, beat and clear the mucus out. So it will do that. And finally, there's the Schedule 3 herb. Schedule 3 herbs are ones that are restricted by consultation to herbalists in this country, and probably in other countries as well. There are various restrictions on it, which is Lobelia inflata. Now, Lobelia inflata you'd have to take in quite a small dose, but seeing as you're going to have to go to a herbalist for that anyway, I don't really need to go into more detail about that. Whooping cough is a bigger problem for people who are smaller, and obviously that mainly means children. And the reason whooping cough is a problem for those is because whooping cough is associated with a pathogen known as Diphtheria pertussis. Diphtheria pertussis works purely through the pertussin toxin, which is a toxin which stimulates coughing. If it didn't stimulate coughing, it wouldn't be a problem. And it goes on for quite a while. It goes on for weeks at a time. Now, this is a problem for smaller children and for smaller people because they've got thin passages, thin bronchioles and other breathing passages as well. So the coughing is going to cause problems. You can get things like pneumothorax. You have the whoop, which is very unpleasant. You also have possible prolapse of the anus through coughing. You get subconjunctival hemorrhaging because of the like that. So it's really nasty stuff, and it goes on and on and on. For an older or a larger person, it's not so much of a problem because their passages will be wider. For younger people, it makes it difficult to breathe, so that's where you get the brain damage, potential asphyxiation and so forth, and the whoop. And you get damage to the lungs, which then persists into adulthood. For a larger person, it's more of a nuisance, although it does make you very tired because it keeps you awake all night, and that will obviously bear some toll on your health. That's what it does. That is the reason why it's harmful. If that can be avoided, then that's a good thing, obviously, and in general people do manage to avoid it. Problem with it is that it is actually persistent and continues to be infectious for a long time. So if people have it in the population, they need to isolate themselves from other people so that it doesn't get passed on. Remember, part of the point of this channel is to give you advice about what will happen if you don't have access to technology, and that's why I'm emphasizing these measures. That's how whooping cough works. It's a remarkably simple thing. You can also see the evolutionary value of coughing and therefore passing on the whooping cough bacteria so that it will continue to reproduce. And there are a lot of things that are like that. The only time when you use an anti-tussive is basically when there's a cough that won't go away, where the problem is the cough. Therefore, the only time you use cherry bark is to suppress the cough reflex. And the reason it works is that cherry bark contains cyanogenic glycosides. That is, it contains substances that release cyanide when they are digested. Cyanide is of course a respiratory poison. So what it does in small quantities is reduce the coughing reflex for that reason, because it is generally what you might call a cold remedy that presses down the vitality of the system because it's a poison. But you don't need to worry about that. Most of the plants in this family are high in cyanogenic glycosides. An example of that will be almonds, another one is apples, and obviously cherry bark, apricots. There are loads. You don't need to worry about the fact that it contains something that produces cyanide in it. It's in very small quantities. It has been regarded as a vitamin in the past, B15, lytril, but I wouldn't say it was that, although the division between vitamins and other active compounds is very blurred. So that's how it works. The other ones, they mainly work by a reflex action and they soothe the respiratory passages. Inulahelenium works in a different way. That's it for today. That's whooping cough for you. Please remember, don't ever treat other kinds of cough. I mean, obviously there are some, like tuberculosis for example, that do need to be treated like that. Don't ever treat them with an anti-tussive, because that will run the risk of them turning into pneumonia. But in the case of whooping cough, it is valid to do that. So let's run through them again. You've got cherry bark, Prunus serratina, Lobelia inflata, which is a Schedule 3 herb. You've got Verbascum thapsus, which is mullein, Glycyrrhiza glabra, which is licorice, Inulahelenium, which is elecampane. And that's it. See you tomorrow.